In my profession, everything comes down to a simple mathematical formula: risk versus reward. I am an actuary for a major insurance conglomerate. My entire job is to analyze data, predict the likelihood of catastrophic failure, and mitigate financial loss before it happens. I am paid to see disasters coming before anyone else does. The ultimate irony is that I almost invested my entire life into the biggest walking disaster I had ever met. My name is Julian. I'm 34 years old. 2 years ago, I got engaged to Natalie. Natalie was stunning, socially connected, and had very, very expensive tastes. She worked as a freelance stylist, which essentially meant she made very little money but expected a luxury lifestyle. When we got engaged, she had one absolute demand. She wanted a lavish, fairy tale destination wedding on Lake Como in Italy. I make a very comfortable mid-six-figure salary, and I had significant savings. I loved her, so I agreed. Over the next year, I signed the contracts and paid the deposits: $30,000 to rent an historic 18th century villa, $40,000 for a block of rooms at a five-star hotel for her immediate family in the wedding party, $30,000 for elite catering, flowers, and a boat cruise. The total cost was hovering around $100,000. It was a massive investment, but I thought I was investing in a lifetime of happiness. I didn't realize I was just funding a free European vacation for her and her favorite mistake. The red flags started appearing about 3 months before the wedding, right after her bachelorette party in Miami. When Natalie came back from Miami, her entire demeanor had changed. She was irritable, constantly guarding her phone, and suddenly very protective of her schedule. Then, she dropped a bomb on the guest list. She wanted to invite her ex-boyfriend, Carter. Carter was a 30-year-old bartender who still lived with 3 roommates. He was the guy she dated in her 20s, the bad boy who treated her terribly but whom she always defended. "Julian, we've matured past all that," she told me when I objected. "He's in my core friend group now. If he doesn't come to Italy, it will create so much drama. Please, just be a secure partner and let him come." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told myself I was being overly analytical. But then, the intimacy completely vanished. She started sleeping in the guest bedroom, claiming she was too stressed about wedding planning to share a bed. She stopped asking about my day. She was treating me like an event sponsor, not a fiancé. So I decided to run a risk assessment. Natalie was sloppy with her data security. She used my old iPad to browse wedding dresses, and she never logged out of her iCloud account. One evening, while she was at a bridesmaid's dinner, I opened the iPad. Her iMessage app was open. The most recent conversation was with Carter. I didn't just find out they hooked up in Miami. I found a premeditated, long-term exit strategy. Carter wrote, "Are you sure the Italian hotel is paid for? I don't want to get stuck with a massive bill when we get there." Natalie replied, "Julian paid for everything up front. The villa, the hotel block, the food, it's all completely covered. We get a week-long luxury vacation in Lake Como for free. You just have to endure him during the ceremony." Carter responded, "And after?" Natalie's final message made my blood run cold. "My lawyer said if we stay married for 18 months, the prenup vests enough for me to get a massive lump sum payout. I play the good wife for a year and a half, I take his money, and then you and I can finally be together for real. Just play along in Italy, baby." I sat in my home office, staring at the screen. She didn't love me. She was actively conspiring with her broke ex-boyfriend to use me for a $100,000 luxury wedding, secure a massive divorce payout, and then leave me. She viewed me as a highly profitable insurance policy. It was time to cancel her coverage. If you discover a sinking ship, you don't run to the deck and scream. You quietly secure a lifeboat and let the rest of the crew go down with the vessel. If I confronted Natalie now, she would play the victim, cancel the wedding herself, and spin a narrative to her family that I was an abusive, jealous monster. Worse, if she canceled, the vendors might refund the money to the joint account she still had access to. I needed to control the entire cancellation process. When Natalie came home that night, I was sitting on the couch, drinking a glass of wine. "Hey, honey," she said, giving me a fake, tight smile. "Dinner was exhausting." "I bet it was," I said warmly. "You know, seeing how stressed you are just makes me want to give you the perfect wedding. You deserve this Italy trip." Her eyes lit up with pure greed. She kissed my cheek and went to bed. The next morning, I went to my office and pulled every single contract I had signed for Lake Como. Because I was the only one with income, every single contract, the villa, the hotel, the caterers, was strictly in my name. I picked up the phone, accounted for the time zone difference, and started making calls to Italy. I spoke to the manager of the 18th century villa. I spoke to the concierge at the 5-star hotel. "I need to cancel the entire event," I told them. Because we were less than 60 days out, the cancellation penalty was severe. I lost 50% of my deposits across the board. The vendors kept $50,000. But the remaining $50,000 was refunded directly back to my personal, private bank account. Losing 50 grand hurts, but paying 50 grand to avoid a divorce that would cost me half my net worth, that's just a smart risk mitigation fee. I didn't cancel Natalie's flight. I didn't cancel her family's flights or Carter's flight. They had all booked their own airfare. But I did cancel my own flight. And with the refunded money, I booked myself a 2-week first-class solo trip to Kyoto, Japan. For the next 2 months, I watched Natalie excitedly pack her designer bags. I listened to her talk about the boat cruise and the 5-course Italian dinner. I just smiled, nodded, and quietly moved all my belongings out of the house into a luxury storage unit. The plan was for Natalie, her family, and Carter to fly into Milan 3 days before the wedding. I told her I had to stay behind for an emergency corporate audit and would fly in a day later. She was absolutely thrilled. A whole day in Italy with her lover, completely unsupervised. "I'll see you at the villa, baby," she said, kissing me goodbye at the airport drop-off. "Have a great flight, Natalie," I replied. 16 hours later, I was sitting in a first-class suite on a flight over the Pacific Ocean, heading to Japan. I paid for the premium in-flight Wi-Fi. I knew their itinerary. I knew exactly when they landed in Milan, rented their cars, and drove the hour up to Lake Como. I waited until I knew they were standing at the gates of the villa. Then I drafted a mass email. I BCC'd the entire guest list, all 120 people, including her parents, my parents, and all our friends. The subject line was, "Wedding cancellation and venue update." I attached the high-resolution screenshots of her text messages with Carter, explicitly detailing their plan to use my money for a free vacation and divorce me in 18 months. In the body of the email, I wrote, "Dear friends and family, it appears Natalie and Carter have planned a wonderful vacation for themselves on my dime. Unfortunately, I have canceled the villa, the hotel block, and the catering. If you are currently in Italy, I highly recommend finding an Airbnb. The wedding is permanently canceled. I am currently en route to Japan. I hit send, and then I turned my phone off. The smoke is clearing. The tone of a man watching karma do its absolute best work on an international scale. When I landed in Tokyo and turned my phone back on, my battery almost died from the sheer volume of notifications. The fallout was an absolute unmitigated disaster for Natalie. She, her parents, her bridesmaids, and Carter had arrived at the historic villa completely exhausted from travel, only to find the massive iron gates locked. When the property manager finally came down, he informed them the event was canceled a month ago. When they tried to go to the five-star hotel, the front desk told them the block was canceled, and because it was peak tourist season in Lake Como, the hotel was 100% fully booked. They had nowhere to stay. While they were panicking in the lobby, the mass email hit everyone's phones. Her parents read the text messages, her bridesmaids read the text messages. Natalie's father, who was a highly respected conservative businessman, was so humiliated and disgusted by her actions that he left her standing in the hotel lobby. He and her mother booked a train to Rome and refused to speak to her. And Carter? The moment he realized the free luxury vacation was canceled and he had to actually pay for his own food and lodging in one of the most expensive cities in Europe, he absolutely panicked. He got into a screaming match with Natalie on the street, took a taxi back to the Milan airport, and flew home. Natalie was left stranded in Italy, completely alone, crying on the sidewalk with 4 suitcases of wedding dresses she would never wear.
It's been almost 3 years. Kyoto was beautiful. I spent 2 weeks eating incredible sushi, visiting temples, and enjoying the fact that I had just successfully avoided the worst financial risk of my life. I broke the lease on our shared apartment while she was still overseas, and by the time she got back, she had to move onto her friend's couch. Last I heard, Natalie is still paying off the massive credit card debt she racked up trying to book last-minute emergency hotels and flights to get out of Italy. Her reputation in our city is permanently destroyed, and she is working as a retail associate because her high-end styling clients dropped her after the scandal. If there is a lesson to be learned here, it's this: always read the data and never ignore the variables. If your partner treats your bank account better than they treat your heart, calculate your exit strategy. Take the cancellation fee. It might cost you in the short term, but letting them ruin your life will cost you everything. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this one, drop a like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments, what is the most dramatic wedding disaster you've ever witnessed? Stay smart and always secure your deposits.